Welcome back to Mac Music Review. It's been a hot second. I've been working this week. I'm back in the work schedule. It's kind of nice to be employed and make money. It's kind of nice. It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. Working tomorrow. It's a good feeling. Anyway, Pitchfork gave the album Kid A perfect score. They gave it a 10, as well as every other music publication company. Even though that originally, when the album was released, it wasn't received that positively. It wasn't known as this amazing album. It was really a little bit afterwards, and then all the positive acclaim started heaping up, and now it is known as one of the best albums of the 2000s. A lot of people say it is the best album of the 2000s. If you've seen my best of the 2000s video, you would know that I don't agree with that. But let's take a look at this legendary album and see if it really holds up to what these critics, if it really is as amazing as everyone says it is. I think it's important to know what this album is in context. This is the fourth Radiohead album, and a lot of people, and what it was for Radiohead is extremely important in the band's discography because it's really where they made this shift. Their first two albums were fairly normie. They kind of sounded like other albums. The first album in a very bad way, the second album in a very, really great way, and that album, The Bends, is seen as a classic. I did a review of that just fairly recently. I'll link that in the description as well. And then they did OK Computer, which to some is the greatest album of all time, the greatest alternative album of all time, the greatest rock album of all time. It's this legendary album that really was kind of in the vein of like art rock and alternative rock. But then they did Kid A, which was a headfirst dive into experimental rock music with a heavy reliance on electronics. It's not all electronics, but there's a lot of electronic and experimental instrumentation and stuff that really sounds really wacky, stuff that a lot of artists had never even dreamed of, especially in the genre, especially artists who weren't in the electronic or the weird electronic genre, the weird electronic music genre. For a rock album, for a band that did rock and alternative music, to switch over to sounding like this was really like unheard of, and a big part of the reason why this album is so legendary. This thing kicks off with the song Everything in Its Right Place, a song that really conveys the manic and energy and insanity that Radiohead often tries to put into their music. And it's worth saying this is a very bleak album. It's a very dark album, especially if you pay attention to the lyrics, and especially with the way Thom Yorke sings. He sings desperate. It is almost kind of a whiny kind of voice, but really it's something desperate and reaching out for, clawing for meaning and looking for something to cling on to. And it's kind of just very desperate sounding. And this song really conveys that energy. It really is a perfect representation of this album with its use of electronics and all that kind of stuff. But then you have the song Kid A, which is baffling how bad it is. This is the worst song on the album. It sounds terrible. This thing is, it's experimental. And this album is very bold and adventurous. And wow, it's insane. It's doing things you've never heard before. It's experimental, bro. But I don't think that every experiment on this thing actually works out that well. And this is the prime example of that. I think this is a really lame song. It just doesn't go anywhere. It feels pointless. It's just a lame song. The national anthem is an interesting song, but at the same time, it's an extremely underwhelming song, especially when you know how legendary this song is supposed to be, how it's supposed to be like one of their best songs. It's got this really long instrumental intro, which I think is the most interesting part of the song, because when you actually hop into the lyrics are fine, but the music from that point onward, the song is not all that interesting. It really isn't very interesting. And apparently, this is the most conventional song on the album. I wouldn't even say that because of the intro is kind of weird and long. But it's an interesting song. It's not a great song. I don't really like it. On the other hand, How to Disappear is beautiful. This thing is elegant. This thing is fantastic. It just sounds just fine, just fantastic, amazing instrumentation, great lyrics, great vibe. This is a great song. And Tree Fingers, the instrumental track, is really, really great. I really miss this. I said this before in other videos, but I really miss the art of the instrumental track. Because in modern music, you don't hear this anymore. You don't hear, unless the entire album is instrumental, it's very rare for you to hear like an instrumental track in an album full of songs with lyrics. But this is a really nice instrumental break right in the middle of the record, and It's a great song. I really, really like Tree Fingers. These songs, Optimistic and In Limbo, really feel like sister songs. They feel similar in terms of their darkness, in terms of their tone, in terms of their sound, and I think they flow into each other very well, and they complement each other very well. Both of the songs are dark, they're brooding, and they're extremely effective in doing what they are trying to do. They're both really great songs. I mean, these songs are really, really great. I don't remember loving these songs the first time I reviewed this album in writing and online. I don't remember I don't remember liking these songs. I really didn't like the album very much in general, but these songs have really grown on me. These are both really, really great songs. And the song Idiotech is the best song on this album and one of the best songs Radiohead has ever made. This song, like everything in its right place, really takes advantage of the experimental and electronic music that defines this album, defines this new sound for Radiohead, and it really is just the best example of that, just like everything in its right place. I think both of these songs are just fantastic musically. They don't sound like anything else I've ever heard. They're just really fantastic songs, like really amazing highlights. Idiotech is a fantastic song. Morning Bell is a good song. And that is all I have to say about this. I was really underwhelmed by this song in my initial review, and I still find it kind of underwhelming. I think it's a good song. I think it's a nice song. I think it's a sweet song. You know, it's you know, once more has those kind of sad, depressing lyrics and the sad, depressing vibe. But it's just, it gets overshadowed by, I think, the better songs in the album, which is basically every other song. This is definitely one of the worst songs. And then I think Motion Picture Soundtrack is a fine, sweet, nice ending to the album. I'm not, you know, the true ending to the album. I don't really count Untitled, that instrumental 40-second instrumental outro, as the true ending. I think this is a more fitting ending. I don't think that Untitled track does anything for the album at all. It really doesn't. It doesn't hurt the album, but it doesn't help it in any way. It doesn't make it any better. But Motion Picture Soundtrack is a really nice song with nice lyrics, a nice instrumental swell. It's a very fitting, fine closer to the album. I included Kid A in the honorable mentions in my best albums of the 2000s list, in my best of the 2000s video. And I would keep it there. I would keep it in the honorable mentions. But you know, I don't love this album at all. I will not come back to this and listen to it again, I don't think. It's just not a pleasant album to listen to, but it's also not sad in like a Elliott Smith, Death Cab for Cutie kind of way, where you can kind of feel the sadness and feel how human it is and just kind of embrace the human aspect of it. This feels very cold and isolated and a little bit robotic with the electronic jarring instrumentation, which I think is very good oftentimes, but sometimes it's kind of not so good, like on the song Kid A. All in all, I don't love this album. I respect this album. I think it actually is a great album. It's just not amazing, and I think it's extremely overrated, but I think the highs on this thing are really fantastic. I think it really doesn't have a bad song on it besides the song Kid A. Everything else is either good or really good or amazing. So Kid A is a great album. It's just, you know, it's not the Bends. It's not OK Computer. It's not In Rainbows. Like, Radiohead has better albums than this. Still, it's really good. I'm going to give it an 8. If I'm rating on a 1 to 10 scale, I would give this album an 8. That's it. Your favorite album sucks. No, I'm kidding. It doesn't suck. It doesn't suck. This is, you know, I just realized this is the only time, this and The Money Store, the only times on this channel where I look at an album that's supposed to be a 5-star, a perfect score album, and I don't give it a 9 or a 10, or I don't give it, you know, the highest possible score or the next highest possible score. The only other time I did that was with The Money Store by Death Grips, because Needle Drop gave it, what, a 10, and I gave it an 8. But I think Kid A is really overrated. Yeah, I think Radiohead has done better. Yeah, it's fine. I can understand if you like this, but it's not for me. It's not my cup of tea. I don't own any Radiohead albums on vinyl or CD. I'm not at all a Radiohead fan. I can respect them, but I'm not a fan at all. My brother thinks they're like the best band ever, so whatever, man. You do you, and have a great rest of your day.